Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. At the Bloomington City Council meeting on June 7th, the Council discussed Resolution 23-09 endorsing legislation to establish a driver card for undocumented Indiana residents. Mayor's Chief of Staff, Josefa Madrigal, presented the resolution to the Council. She explained that the Office of the Mayor received information from La Voz Unida, a nonprofit group that asked the city to pass the resolution.
I do want to share that the Office of the Mayor received a packet of information about this supporting a resolution for undocumented Indiana residents by La Voz Unida. La Voz Unida is a nonprofit agency based out of Plymouth, Indiana, and a representative, Ed Rodriguez, is here, as well as members. I also want to acknowledge, and I did tell them, there's also several of our community members who are here who are also in support of this resolution.
Madrigal outlined the benefits of passing the resolution, explained the limitations of the driver card, and shared that 13 other municipalities in Indiana have passed similar legislation.
The Office of the Mayor supports and endorses this resolution. In last week's press release, the Mayor Hamilton mentioned the passage of Senate Bill 248 will be good for communities, good for the economy, and good for the dignity of our friends and neighbors. I want to share information of what this driving card does when a person has it. They can safely engage in basic essential needs. They can buy groceries or going to food pantries, and I can tell you that food pantries is one of the aspects that I'm familiar with when I encounter most of our community members locally here in Bloomington. This will enable them to go to work and from work, also transporting their children to and from school if the bus is not able to come pick them up. They can access healthcare, basic healthcare, and then it will boost state revenue through fees associated with obtaining the credentials. I do want to mention what this driver card will not be able to do, and that is they will not have access to vote. They won't have access to federal assistance or claim. They will not be able to claim citizenship or lawful residence. I do want you to know that there are currently 20 U.S. states enacted similar legislation offering driving cards to undocumented residents. In Indiana, at least 13 other municipalities have passed similar resolutions in support of driving cards for undocumented Indiana residents. Our community contributes to countless ways, and one of them, there's several, but one of them that comes to mind is the fact that they do pay taxes and they file taxes. And this is just from previous employment that I've had in working with the Latino community, our local Latino community here in Bloomington, calling, scheduling appointments to file taxes, and again, we all pay taxes. The driver's card will ensure that all drivers in Indiana roads are trained, so they will be able to take this written test at the BMB, pass it, and then take this driving test at the BMB, pass it, and then be issued a driver's card. They will be certified, as I mentioned, just going through the training, going through all the prerequisites as needed to have and obtain a driver's card. And also, once you have a driver card, they will be able to access car insurance.
During public comment, Indiana Senator Shelley Yoder asked the Council to approve the resolution to pledge Bloomington's support to the legislation.
Good evening. I'm Shelley Yoder, and I have the incredible honor of serving you in the Indiana State Senate for Senate District 40. And I'm here and rising in support of your approval and support of Resolution 2309. Resolution 2309, it just is a reflection of the amazing work of what we're hearing and what we're seeing today. Over the last 13 years, the efforts have been somewhat successful, but they were correct that they tend to die in the Indiana state legislature. But the efforts are bipartisan, and I want to reiterate this. This is not a partisan effort, this is a bipartisan effort, and each year we get a little closer. And going back to a grassroots effort and taking community by community, city by city, town by town, and asking for the support in these resolutions is a brilliant idea. I commend your work because I can see how getting bipartisanship support through our communities is the way to get this passed. A resolution that would support driver card legislation makes our roads safer, and it makes good economic sense. Individuals who qualify for a driver card are our colleagues, they are our employees, and they pay our taxes. They pay taxes. They are also trying to get to their jobs and trying to get their kids to school. It's the right thing to do, and we can support good public policy by supporting this resolution and doing what we can here in Bloomington to raise awareness, number one, and encourage that kind of dialogue with our legislators across the state of Indiana. And one last thing, if you're sitting there and wondering if the Bloomington City Council does something, what does it harm the efforts that we're seeing here? And I want to say first, no. I think it only encourages greater engagement throughout Indiana on this issue, because as I've said it repeatedly, this is a bipartisan effort, and I think one reason why it fails is people just don't understand it, and education is the way forward. So please vote in support of this resolution, and I look forward to continue to work with the residents throughout Indiana, making sure this happens to make our streets safer and good economic policy. Thank you.
The council passed the resolution unanimously. And we'll have more Cats Week after this message.
I'm at risk of thinking there's just no point in trying.
I'm at risk of looking in the mirror and hating what I see.
I'm at risk of being told not to tell.
But with Girls Inc. in my corner,
I will not be another statistic.
I will fight for myself.
With you in my corner, I will win.
Fuel her fire and she will change the world. Girls Inc.
Welcome back to Cats Week. On June 7th, at the Monroe County Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, Planning Department Associate Planner Sean Smith presented on the Zoo Bay side yard setback variance for solar panels.
This request is a one design standards variance from the, that should be side yard setback, to permit the placement of a solar array within a 30-foot side yard setback. The variance was triggered by a residential electrical permit, R-23-238. During the review of this building permit, it was found that the proposed solar array is encroaching into the side setback. If the design standard variance is approved, the petitioner will be able to continue with the electrical permit and comply with all zoning and building codes. If the design standards variance is denied, the petitioner will be required to place the structure in a place that meets the side yard setback requirement and comply with all zoning and building codes.
Smith shared a letter of support from a nearby resident who said that they have spoken with the property owner and are in favor of the solar panel. However, Smith said that the planning department recommends denial of the setback variance.
Staff does recommend denial of the side yard setback from Chapter 833. The reason being practical difficulties have not been met, specifically C, which states cannot be reasonably addressed through the redesign or relocation of the development, building, or structure existing or proposed.
Petitioner David Zubay spoke to the board and explained why the location was chosen.
I've had 3 different solar companies come out to the property and evaluate it. And I've also had the help of Daryl Bogus, who's here. He's a volunteer with 2 solar advocacy agencies. And You know, they bring out these meters that can measure, because there are a lot of trees on this property, so there's not a lot of choice about where a solar panel could go. And this particular clearing is at the high ground on the lot, so it has the best chance of getting some sun above the trees. And with the meter, it seemed like it would be okay. You know, not perfect, but the southwest corner of the lot would really be an eyesore to the whole neighborhood. I don't think anybody would be happy about putting it in there, so that wasn't considered. Plus, it would be extremely expensive, as mentioned, to run the wire, and you know, you'd be digging up a lot of tree roots to go through all that yard. The other clearing just north of the southwest corner is a possibility, but that's where the septic field is. So this location is really the only ground location. You know, could put it on the roof, but that's not really ideal because the main house is a geodesic dome roof, so that's going to be a big problem. And the garage has kind of an octagonal shaped roof, so that, you know, it would be expensive and just not ideal in the opinion of the companies that have come out. The solar cam is a very minimal structure that rotates 4 times a year and seems very interesting. So yeah, I really think that's the only option if I'm going to install solar.
Board member Skip Daly said that he supports the variance and asked the county commissioners to address solar panels specifically in the county zoning.
I will vote yes, but I would also like to say I believe this should be a catalyst, if the commissioners are listening, to appoint an intern or somebody to look through the code and to see how solar needs to be addressed specifically in this day and age and how it applies to our county ordinance in addition. So with that being said, hopefully they're listening and will take some action. I will vote yes.
The board unanimously voted to approve the setback variance. During the June 6 meeting of the Bloomington Board of Public Works, City Attorney Chris Wheeler discussed a lease agreement with Summit Hill Community Development Corporation.
Summit Hill was created or formed by the Bloomington Housing Authority a few years back to house City of Bloomington Land Trust and other extended programming of the BHA, and this is one of those extended programs. The property in question is located at 1050 North Summit. I think yesterday at the work session I referenced 1007 North Summit, but that's actually the headquarters for BHA in Summit. So it's basically right across the street from what we're talking about, which is 1050. This property used to be the home of a water tower that utilities owned. They decommissioned that water tower, and in the process of decommissioning also had to do some soil remediation, which they completed successfully under a voluntary remediation project with IDEM. And at this point in time, the property has no use restrictions on it from an environmental standpoint and is a suitable place for Summit to construct a mixed-use property, a mixed-use structure that would include a licensed daycare and several affordable housing units for rent. The city believes this would be a good project and wishes to engage in a lease agreement for 99 years. Some of the high points of this lease agreement would be that there will be mutual hold harmless agreements between the two parties. There would be no subletting of any of the property without approval by the City of Bloomington. The tenant would be solely responsible for any repairs and maintenance on the property, including any structures that the tenant might place there. Tenant will also be required to maintain insurance and show proof of insurance annually on the structures located on the property.
Board President Kyla Cox-Deckard asked if Summit Hill were not able to develop the property, what would happen to the lease? Wheeler explained how that would play out.
The uses that have been stated, which are the multi-use conditions, which would be the daycare facility and the affordable housing units, if those cannot be accomplished, those are the only things they're allowed to do on that property. And the two parties are able to terminate the lease whenever they want to by agreement. And so we would be able to terminate the lease at that time if they weren't going to be able to use it for those limited purposes.
The board approved the lease with Summit Hill unanimously. And we'll have more Cats Week after this message.
For hurting families in Monroe County.
A contribution to children who are vulnerable and in need of an advocate.
A staff that goes above and beyond to support and advocate for children in need of services.
The web of remarkable people who are dealing with difficult situations.
So many young people that are in need of help and trying to find a stable family, a stable place to live. Without the CASAs to make that happen, many of them would be unable to find a good home.
I love being that voice for the child who can't speak for themselves in court.
It takes me out of my comfort zone, and it also helps others.
CASA means supporting our community.
Being a CASA is making sure that your village is healthy and whole, and that the children in your village will someday be able to help the village as well.
A child who doesn't have a voice, maybe in their family situation or a school situation, now has a voice that can advocate for them.
I really enjoy working with children that are going through difficult times and letting them know that I care about their future.
We are privileged with our charge of representing the best interest of children. And so therefore we can advocate for exactly what they need without restriction, focusing on their best interest.
I want to repair the world one child at a time.
Welcome back to Cats Week. At the Bloomington Utilities Service Board meeting on June 5th, board member Jeff Amon asked about Davie Resource Group's Miller Showers dredging permits. Assistant Director of the Environmental Programs, Catherine Zager, responded.
I have one on page 4 of 8 for Davie Resource Group, Miller Showers dredging permits for $2,000. A couple questions there. One, is this, does Davie Resource Group help us prepare dredging permits? Is that, did they?
Yep. Catherine Zager, Assistant Director, Environmental. Yes, Davie is contracted with us to help us do the 401 and 404 permitting for the Miller Showers dredging. That is their first invoice for the early coordination and wetland delineation.
Amon followed up by asking why they need permits in the first place. Zager explained what the permit is for.
IDEM requires us, or DNR, I'm not sure which, requires us to get a permit to dredge a pond that's an artificially built pond that we built for trapping sediment for our stormwater.
Yep. So it's actually, the permit is not for the action of dredging specifically, because we are looking at ways that will have the least disturbance, especially because of the surrounding park. The permit is for the discharge of the dewatered sediment back into the creek.
Next, Assistant Director of Finance, Matt Havey, discussed a customer refund.
When we installed the meter reader. The meter. Yeah, meter. I think it was in 2020. It was set up to read 10 times the amount that it was actually using. So they've been paying for 10 times the amount of water ever since that meter was installed. So we went back and looked at all their usage and all the rates at the time and everything, and needed to give them a refund. And they said they wanted to check for it instead of just carrying a balance for it.
Havey went on to explain what caused the inquiry.
They have a new facilities manager that was looking into utility bills and said there's no way we were using this much water. And then we did our research, and there was no way they were using that much water, and so we fixed the meter.
The board approved the refund unanimously. Next, Director of Utilities Vic Kelson gave an update on the budget.
There are a couple of things to discuss. I think the biggest one is, besides the budget, when we did the rate review for the stormwater fee last year, the biggest project was the Clear Creek Tunnel headworks up near the IU campus. That project is, the updated engineer's estimate is almost 3 times the engineer's estimate that we used when we did that rate review. And the rate review contemplated us paying for that out of cash. So instead, it looks like what we're going to have to do is do some sort of bonding for that project and just combine some CIP items and delay some CIP items so that we can get that project done in 2024. And that bonding would happen before the end of the year so that the project could start in beginning of next year.
The board agreed to discuss more at a future finance subcommittee meeting. Kelson said that the budget should be finalized around the end of July. On June 5th, at the Bloomington Redevelopment Commission meeting, Director of Housing and Neighborhood Development, John Zodi, gave the director's report.
As of our next RDC meeting on June 20th, we'll have a new assistant director in the department. So her name is Anna Killian Hansen. She's a Bloomington native, realtor, owns a business here with her family, and so she's coming on June 12th. So we're excited. We will then be at full staff here at hand. So we're excited about that. And it's getting into the busy summer. Just want to remind the public to mind your weeds and grass and make sure everything's cleaned up appropriately. But other than that, we are in the thick of HUD stuff. So we have 2 audits that we're in the middle of. I want to thank the hand staff for all their work on those. It's a lot of gathering paperwork and files, and so we're right in the middle. We're ended one last week. We're beginning one this week, so we'll be done with those in the next few weeks, and we'll find out the results later in the summer. And still waiting on results for our plans we've submitted that you all have offered feedback on. So it's a busy time in hand as always.
Commission member Deb Hutton asked when they expect to hear back from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development about the grants hand applied for. Zodi responded.
We actually got those earlier, I think February 27th was the date we found out the exact amount. So those, and we went to council the next night, I think. I don't know that we ever circled back with you guys on that. So when you get the next thing that'll come to you are the funding agreements. So what happened, we got the numbers early this year. So I think the letter is dated February 27th. The next night we went to the council and everything was already prepped, and we said, these numbers are going to tweak a little bit. So we ended up getting less CDBG money, Community Development Block Grant, because the formula changes. And what was awarded last year, we used some, we carried forward some money that had been sitting in the pot, if you will, that had been unused. So we carried that forward. So we actually will have awarded quite a bit less this year. As far as what we got as a grantee from the federal government, the formula, there are more grantees, and so the ratio changed, and we actually signed on a letter to urge Congress to increase the amount of CDBG money. We actually got about $60,000 more in home investment partnership dollars. So the numbers are $855,000 for CDBG, $868 I think, and then $642,709 in home money are the numbers off the top of my head.
Later, the commission discussed an agreement with U3 Advisors for Owners Representative Consultant Services for Hopewell. Vice President of JS Held, Deb Kuntz, presented on the contract with U3 Advisors.
We are recommending the contract be for 24 months for $478,000. It would be for that 24-month period. In the contract packet, if you, as you read through the details, you probably noticed on Exhibit B, which I think was page 13 of the document, there was an extensive breakdown of the different types of work they would have, including work that's associated with, they're calling phase 1, but it's really our blocks 8, 9, and 10, of which there are some proposals on the table for. And then the next site, which would be blocks 1, 2, and 3, and then with 4, 5, and 6, and 7.
Committee member Cindy Canarney asked if U3 Advisor would prioritize using local developers. U3 Advisor's managing director, Todd Stern, responded.
I don't know that I ever maybe got the full answer or understood the answer, but I'm curious about U3's commitment to engaging local developers and local partners. Obviously, I think that's incredibly important as we move forward on such a profound community endeavor. So could you speak to that, please?
I'd be happy to. I mean, I can't think of an engagement where we've been involved in developer procurement where we have not reached out to intensive local developers in any given market. To me, one of the keys to success is to have a mix. I think it's essential that we have the local players who know this market, who have proven experience, negotiating transactions with the city and with the state. I also think it's important, though, to look outside the municipality, to look statewide, to look regionally, in order to create as much momentum and excitement and sense of competition amongst the developer respondents as possible. But 100%, we'd be completely committed to engaging local developers that have the right expertise and experience in this kind of development.
So can you speak more specifically on how you'd go about doing that?
How we go about finding those developers?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
especially
I think,
locally.
I think that first of all, information today, particularly in the real estate market, is really transparent, and so I think that it will not be hard for us to identify those developers that have been active in the market over the last several years. We'd also, of course, turn to you, to Deb, to others among the stakeholders in this engagement to be sure that we are, touching on all of the right, including all of the right and appropriate developers that have been active in this market. But I think that with a little bit of desktop research and talking to all of you, it will not be hard to identify the folks that have historically been active in this market.
Konarny asked if they could include a quarterly reporting requirement for U3 advisors to report to the Redevelopment Commission.
I think it would be important, again, because of the high-profile nature of the project, to have, a maybe quarterly update from U3 at one of our RDC meetings so we can understand what the progress is. Because it looks like in the document there's quarterly milestones identified in there. So it'd be wonderful to make sure that we're staying on track of what's working, the timelines, et cetera, and look at that on a routine basis.
Stern said they are happy to provide quarterly reports. The Commission voted in favor of the agreement with U3 advisors. And that is all for CATSweek. Thank you for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.